Hello, welcome to episode 265 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and today is the 1st of February. So welcome everybody, I hope you've all had a lovely crafty week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to share all the things that I've been making in the last couple of weeks actually, because I did a crafty vlog last week. So today we have some knitting. I've got a couple of finished objects to show you which I'm excited about, and a new cast on. I have some crochet, which is a lovely new hook on. I've got some sewing to show you, a question from the Ask Me Anything thread on the Ravelry group, and a little update on what's going on in terms of like meetups, etc. Some information on my shop update, and a little appearance from Jensen at the end of the podcast with something hand knitted to wear. So let's get on with the knitting, shall we? I shall start with what I'm wearing actually, that would be a good thing. I am wearing my finished Comfort Fade Cardi. Now I did this so that there was no positive ease, so it's, well, there's just no ease at all. So it does sort of close up, but it's not massive on me, which is the way I like it really. This cardigan isn't for buttoning up, it's got no button band on it, and I don't tend to button them up anyway, so I really like this style of cardigan. Let me step back a bit so you can see it a little bit better. So this is a reverse stockinette on the main body of the cardigan, and then you've got a garter stitch rib around the cuffs and then around the front band, but you've got a standard 2x2 rib all around the back, which I think is really nice. It makes a very, very cozy cardigan, and I'm so pleased I've knitted this. So it's obviously called the Comfort Fade Cardi, so you can see how the colours fade. I really enjoyed doing that actually, and I'm so glad I picked my favourite colours. They look gorgeous to me anyway. You can see that the fade of the actual body of the cardigan and the arms goes from sort of dark to light down the bottom, which, well, that's the colours I've chosen. And then when you do the cuff, you sort of reverse that, and on the band it does tell you to do it the opposite way actually. So I've reversed the order of the yarns on the band here because I wanted the darker colour to be on this neck bit, so that it's sort of made most of the cardigan these darker colours rather than the light ones, and I'm really pleased with how that's come out. I have blocked it so that the collar is not folded as much as I want it to, so I might have to reblock it so that this is really sort of folded over nicely. But this is so squishy and gorgeous. I would definitely knit this again. It's one of my favourite knits that I've ever made, I think. And I actually, normally I say that I like a 3/4 length sleeve, but I think sometimes you do need a full length sleeve, and I like this because it's long and it goes onto your wrist and keeps you very cosy when it's really, really cold. So I'm so pleased with this. I'll give you a bit of a twirl. I will pop some video on the screen now that shows me wearing it outside actually, so you can see it in the better light. Although it does blow out some of the colours, so the colours aren't as accurate when I'm outside, but you can see the fit a little bit better when I'm sort of walking along. So for this cardigan I used two skeins, 200 grams of each of the 4 colours, and the 4 colours are as follows. This one here is Who's That Girl, and I ended up with 93 grams left actually out of the 200 grams. We have this colour here, which is the second to darkest colour, which is Ice Ice Baby. And that one I had 32 grams left on, so that's the least amount that I had left. That's because you sort of split for the sleeves using that colour, so you use most of that colour. The colour that is the first to the darkest of the colours, I ended up actually having 118 grams left, so I would only have needed 100 grams of that. So for your first colour that you start knitting the pattern with, I don't think you'd need to have 2 skeins for my size. So the size I did was the 42-inch chest. So if you do pick that size, you may not need 200 grams because I had 118 left. So bear that in mind. So for the last of the colours. I had 30 grams left of this one, and this is Terrace Apart. I forgot to say actually, this is called There Must Be an Angel, and they're all from my Mixtape Minis Remix Volume 10 mini set, but obviously I've dyed them up in full skeins. I haven't got them listed on my website at the moment in full skeins, but if you do want them, just drop me a message and I can dye some up for you. So I did end up quite a lot of yarn left, so I'm going to try and think of a pattern that I can use all those bits and bobs in. Actually, I could possibly do a matching Camaro like Jensen's Camaro. So there's a adult Camaro which is also on my Make 9 list, but I've made Jensen a little Camaro, so I might make an adult version that matches, which is the same colours as I've done in this cardigan, so that will be nice. And I've probably got enough to do all the stripes up there, so might have to do that. And it also uses up leftover yarn from another project, so always good. So that is my first finished object, and I have a finished object number 2. Now this is because Liz has knitted this one. So this is one of the Make 9 that I put down on my list for Jensen, and this first one is the DK Flax, and it's a free pattern by Tin Can Knits, and this is the 2 to 4 age range. So it's a lovely basic jumper pattern, and it's got this garter stitch detail on the shoulder, which I think is lovely. This is a little bit big for Jensen, but I did video him walking in the woods earlier this morning, so I will put that footage at the end so you can see what it looks like. But he did have a jumper underneath because it is a little bit chilly today, but I wanted to show this obviously in the photos, but it is a little bit big, so obviously you could get another jumper underneath. It's got quite a nice wide neckband, so he can get that over his head easily, which is nice because he does get a little bit stressed if it is a bit tight over his head. If I'm taking a while to pull it over, he doesn't like things over his face, so it's nice that it's a nice wide neckline. It's just got a standard 1x1 rib around the bottom of the cuffs, and it seems to fit relatively well, but obviously I've knitted it, or Liz has knitted it in a larger size. He is only just 2 and it is 2 to 4, so hopefully that'll be something that he can get a lot of wear out of, but it looks okay at the moment. It's not absolutely massive, but it does look quite big. I did end up turning the cuffs over a couple of times like that so that the sleeves weren't too long on him, but I love it. So this colourway is one of my own hand-dyed yarn colourways, and I thought it'd be nice for him to have a nice bright green, and this is Everything I Do It For You, inspired by the song Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. It's one of the yarns that I dyed up with one of the music from the movies set a couple of years ago. So I dyed up 300 grams because of, that's what it said in the pattern, that I'd need 300 grams of DK weight yarn, but it only ended up using 160 grams, so there is a lot left of this, so I could possibly get a second jumper out of that yarn. So just bear in mind that they do sort of overestimate on these patterns, although you don't want to be short on yarn, do you? I suppose it's because people have quite a varied amount of tensions, and when you do knit baby garments you don't tend to gauge swatch as much, I think, because if you knit it slightly bigger they're going to grow into it. It's absolutely fine. So there we go. So I do have 140 grams of this yarn left to use for something else. The yarn base that I used this time was a BFL DK, which I have in my shop, and I just love the puffiness of this yarn. It's quite lofty. It has got a slight more, it's got a bit of a tooth compared to a merino, but it is quite soft for a more toothy yarn, but it is still super wash. So it's still easily washed in the washing machine on a wool cycle, which is handy for Jensen's things if he gets it all muddy or whatever. So that is another finished object. So thank you, Liz, for knitting that for Jensen. That's number 1 off the Make 9 list for me and Adam's mum as well, so that's brilliant. 1 month down, 1 item down on each of the lists. So because I've cast off this cardigan, I had to cast on another knitting project that was a garment off my list that I'd started. So, ta-da! This is my cast on for my love note. see if I can zoom in a little bit better. So this is the Love Note pattern, and I can already tell why so many people have knitted this. It's quite a simple lace pattern, but it's so much fun, and it seems to knit up really, really quickly, which is fantastic. So I am knitting this in my own hand-dyed yarn in the pink colourway, inspired by the Aerosmith song, and it is quite a magenta rather than a pink I suppose, but I just thought Aerosmith song pink, this is the pink that I imagined. Right, so I have knitted with one strand of merino fingering weight yarn, merino and nylon, and then one strand of alpaca lace, which gives a lovely fluffy texture. I love how sort of light it is as well, which is really, really lovely. And following the pattern, I've chosen the 44-inch bust because I'm about 42, but I thought I'd give it a couple of inches ease for this one, even though I normally go for no ease, because the alpaca lace hasn't got a lot of stretch in it at all. And I thought I'm just going to go for just a little bit on the looser side, because I want to make sure that I've got enough room to move in something that's not quite as stretchy as normal. Although, because knitting is quite stretchy anyway, even if the actual fibre isn't that stretchy, it should be fine. I just thought I'd go on the slightly looser side. So the only thing I've done differently on this is I did the cast on. Instead of doing a provisional cast on, I did Judy's magic cast on, which I have a tutorial for myself, so I'll leave a link to that in the description bar down below. A little bit fiddly to start with, but it does mean that I don't have to pick up stitches later. I was a bit worried that having a fluffy yarn, it'll be annoying to be able to, a bit annoying to pick up stitches from a provisional cast on. So I thought I'll just do a Judy's magic cast on, then I've got stitches that are ready to knit when I come back to doing the neckline. I thought that would be nice. The only thing you have to sort of remember with Judy's magic cast on is to make sure that when you do the cast on, you don't twist it at all, and to just be careful when you're actually doing the cast on straight away and start knitting in the round, so that you don't get yourself in a mess, because it is quite fiddly otherwise. But I just find it a lot easier than when you have to go back to a provisional and fiddle around picking up the stitches with a fluffy yarn. So I thought that would be nice. It looks like a tiny little opening for my head because I have put it on a 16-inch cable. So I've taken the tips off the needles and I've just joined the two ends of the cable with a bulb pin there, just to secure it, to make sure that the stitches don't come off, and those stitches are ready to knit when I get back to them, and I can just leave them on that cable, just screw my needle tips on, and then I'm ready to go. So these are the higher sharp, well, the cables aren't sharp obviously, but I'm using higher cables, and this is the large size because it's a 6mm needle. So all I'll have to do is screw in my 6mm needles in the large cables that I've got there. So I've got the rest of my knitting on a 32 to 34-inch cable here. I've only just started knitting on this larger cable size. I was originally carried on knitting with the 16-inch cable when I was first doing the lace bit, but now I've just transferred it to the larger needle size. But I'll still only need to, I won't need to do magic loop with this, but I love this bright pink. It gives me so much joy, and I think it doesn't look too bad on my pasty skin. I think it goes well with my hair anyway, which is always a good thing. So I am loving knitting this, and to be honest, I've only spent about 3 evenings knitting on this, so it knits up super quick. So Karen, you were right. It does seem to knit up really quickly. So I'm hoping to be able to finish this by Valentine's Day, fingers crossed, you never know. I have dyed up 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn and 2 skeins of alpaca, and actually it said I needed 650 yards for the cropped version, and I think 750 yards for the standard version, and which means that I would be slightly under for the standard version with my 2 skeins of alpaca, because that would be 300 yards each, 300 meters each, so about 600 meters in total, which is about the same as 650 yards, so I'd be a bit short. but I thought because I had so much left over from the Comfort Vade cardigan and the Tin Can Knits pattern, and this is Tin Can Knits as well, I thought I'm just going to risk it. I'll knit the body the length I want it to, and then I can always do short sleeves if I haven't got enough yarn. I thought I just hate having too much excess yarn dyed up, so I'm going to give it a go and risk it for a biscuit. So I am knitting the 44, I think it might be 44.5-inch chest for this one, and I have checked my gauge. I'm spot on for gauge. I was really naughty. What I've been doing lately is, because I'm a bit short on time, I used to gauge swatch all the time, but now because time is so tight at the moment, I just started knitting, and then I've just been measuring my gauge as I go, and I was glad that it was spot on, so that's good. So I will keep you updated with my jumper progress. But I have had a new crochet hook on. So if you watched last week's vlog, you'll have seen that I started crocheting my lovely advent minis from Giddy Yarns that were in the 2022 advent, which was the one that was themed for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I did actually say on last week's video that it's last year, but it wasn't, of course, it was the year before. So these are the ones that I've crocheted up, and I've actually crocheted up one of each of the advent minis plus the mini set that I purchased from Helen last year. It was one of her yarn clubs, because I thought it would go really nicely with the colours that I'd got out of her advent. And I've tried to sort of fade the colours along there, and I've just done one of each so far, but I'm thinking I could maybe get 3 out of each of the mini skeins, the 10-gram mini skeins. So the original pattern for the, what's it called, the Weekender blanket by Sandra Paul, who's the Cherry Heart podcast, says to use DK yarn and a 4mm crochet hook for this. But I have got a fingering weight advent from Helen. I've put it in a cute little basket here. I've got a fingering weight advent, so I decided to hold it double rather than sort of not use it for this, because I really had my heart set on this pattern, and I thought actually if I did hold it double, I could do it a little bit quicker. The hexagons would come out quicker rather than doing just a single fingering weight yarn and a sort of 3mm hook. I'll just stick to the pattern size with a 4mm crochet hook and hold it double instead, and I love this. How nice does that look? I'm really pleased with how this is coming along. I did originally start sewing my ends in as I was going, and I have done quite a lot of these, but I was crocheting quite a few when Jensen was in the room, and I was trying to minimise the things that were sort of dangerous for him to get hold of. So I put my darning needle away, and I was just using a tiny little pair of snips, which I was hiding in my pocket, so he doesn't seem to mind too much me using a crochet hook around him, so that's why there's so many ends still hanging. I normally like to do them sort of as I go. But hasn't that come out lovely so far? The plan was, I think, to do, so 3 strips has made the full set of colours. I'd do another 2 strips of these colours, and then I might go on to putting other colours in it, depending on how big it is when I finish those. So what I could do is, if I don't quite get the 3 hexagons out of one 10-gram mini, I could use 2 colours, 1 strand each, and mix them together to sort of use those, and then I can put the rest in my sort of scraps bag to do another scrappy corner to corner crochet blanket, I think, because that was a lot of fun. I've got a huge one in the lounge which we use quite a lot. It's very heavy, so I think I'd do a smaller one next time. I love all these colours that Helen's put together for the advent, and Jensen's favourite colour is this yellow one here. So I'll have to make sure that I put more yellow in the blanket, I think, for him, because he's probably going to be the one using it. I could make it quite big and rainbow colours, and it would be lovely to have in his room, I think. So the back of the work looks like this, and you can see to start with I did sew in the ends, but there is quite a few ends on this end to sew in. But they don't take very much time to crochet up, so I definitely recommend crocheting one of these. So the join is just joined actually on the corners. There's a join as you go tutorial that Sandra's got on her website, which is nice and easy to follow. I was a bit concerned that this would sort of pull apart too much, but actually it feels really sturdy with this size of hexagon. And I think if you did them bigger, you could do it so that you did like a chain in the center of one of the sides and then did the join along the side as well. But I think that's really nice that you can actually join them as you go. The only trouble is you've got to really sort of plan your placement before you crochet them. Obviously you can't change your mind once they've joined up. But there we go. That is my crochet progress, which I'm really pleased about because I wanted to cast that on all of last year. Cast it on, hook it on, or whatever you call it. So on to my sewing section now. So I had some blocks that were from my lovely friend Anne's stash, and she passed away and her daughter passed some of the pieces on to me and the other members of our local quilt group. And this block looked like this, and there was obviously corners coming from the side because this is a sort of cathedral window block that was left over in her stash, and I thought, oh, I could make a pin cushion with that. So what I did is I folded the corners around to the back, and then I sewed along these sides to join it together, filled it with some polyester stuffing to make a cushion out of it, and then I've put 4 squares of nice pink bright fabric that I thought went really well with the background fabric inside where you put the cathedral windows, and then these are folded in the edges. So I might actually do a little tutorial on doing the cathedral window because it's something that I fancied doing for a bigger quilt, so I hopefully will do that in the near future. But basically when you've sort of folded it together, you have these edges that you can fold over and then stitch down. So these are Liberty Print lawn fabrics that I got in my stash that go really well with some of the other sort of English paper piecing things that I've made to go in my sort of English paper piecing kit. So there we go, there is the pin cushion that I made in the vlog last week. So I've got a question from the Ask Me Anything thread in the Ravelry group, and it is from Leslie, and she was asking about alternating skeins to prevent pooling, and she was saying that she was a bit confused with helical knitting and wanted me to talk about it on the video. I am going to try and do some little videos on alternating skeins when I'm actually knitting on the body of this jumper, the Love Note, to explain a little bit more about why you do alternating skeins, etc. But just in summary, you want to alternate your skeins if you've got 2 yarns that are dyed, even if they're dyed in the same batch and they're hand dyed, there's probably slight differences between the 2. So if you do either 1 or 2 rows of each and alternate them and mix them up so that the colour is more of a even all over your garment, it just helps make it look a little bit more professional, especially if it's a very tonal yarn or very speckled. That can help your garment look a bit more even all over. So when I'm alternating skeins just on a standard technique, I'd knit 2 rows of each yarn. So I'd start knitting with 1 yarn, knit 2 rows, and then start knitting with a second yarn, knit 2 rows, and then leave them both attached, go to yarn number 1 and start knitting 2 rows of that first yarn again, and then 2 rows of the second row. So you're running the yarn up on the inside of the work, so you get sort of a stripe effect. Now if you're doing if you've got 2 yarns of the same sort of colourway that you're just alternating just to make it a more even colour, you can just do that. So helical knitting is a little bit different. You can use it in the place of sort of alternating skeins, but it is for when you're knitting with 2 colours, say, and you have the stripes, you knit 1 round of each colour, and then if you knit them without doing the helical knitting technique, you end up with a little bit of a jog at the beginning of the round. So where the sort of colour change occurs when as you're knitting round, because you're sort of knitting helically, but when you're doing the change of colour, you're changing on that 1 point on every row, so you end up with a little jog all the way along, all along those stripes. But with a helical knitting, basically you've got your first colour and you knit around, and then you basically knit until the last 3 stitches of that colour, and then you slip purlwise 3 stitches, start knitting with your new colour and knit all the way around until you've got 3 stitches of the previous colour left. Slip those purlwise and start knitting with your new colour, and you'll end up basically knitting in a spiral with the 2 yarns. So the beginning of the colour actually moves around where you're knitting in a circle. So it only applies to knitting in the round, but you do end up with no jogs at all when you're doing striping. So you don't necessarily need to do the helical technique if you're just sort of alternating skeins. So I hope that helps, Leslie. I will do a little video on alternating skeins, as I say, on my love note when I get to the body section. I will leave links to the Babbles Travelling Yarns tutorials, which are really good, in the description bar down below to tell you a little bit more about the helical knitting. I think if you actually watch somebody doing it, it helps get it in your head as well. So now we're on to my What's Occurring section. So we have the Barbara's Day Out meeting on the 17th of March coming up at Dunston Hall, Terrace Bar at 2 o'clock. So put the date in your diaries. I say about it every week because not everyone watches every video. So just to remind people that that's coming up. You don't need to book with me, you can just turn up on the day because we just take over the bar basically. So the next thing I need to mention for the What's Occurring section is also actually something to do with my shop as well, but I do have my pattern coming out, well, the pattern update coming out on the blanket. So this is a Pop Stars blanket, and it's a modification of the nest box shawl. I'll show you my nest box shawl actually. This is one of the versions which is in a DK weight yarn. So this is the nest box version where you can actually see 3D boxes. This is the shawl version, so I've actually written it up to be a pattern. I've actually only got one block here to show you. I have written plans for the large versions. I think it's 60 by 70 inches, the one version, and a very similar size for the actual box version as well. There's two different versions for the box and one for the stars. This one I call the Pop Stars blanket, but I've planned it all out, and there's the different shapes that fit in between there as well. But I didn't actually get one whole blanket finished because it's a lot of work, but it's been test knitted and everything, so we know that all the pieces fit together. It's just getting the massive blanket actually made. So I am going to be doing a knit along for this blanket over on the Ravelry group and on Instagram. I will write the hashtag on the screen to use on Instagram, and also I'll leave it in the description bar down below and leave a link to the Ravelry group as well. But basically it's just knitting along with this blanket pattern, whether you make it a small sort of baby quilt size or do the full plans of the blankets that I've designed is absolutely up to you. So I'm planning on doing one of these blocks a month to do the Pop Stars version, and that makes it so when you've done 12 of these, you sort of more or less completed the blanket. There's just the edging pieces to just square off to finish it off. So if I do one each month, then it'll feel like I'm just doing a little bit and it's not too overwhelming to make a whole blanket, because making a whole blanket can be really overwhelming. But 12 of these, one each month, will be nice and sort of easy to digest. So this one I've made in some of my colours I've already got in the shop, and then I've just used some undyed yarn to go with it. I do have undyed yarn listed in the shop if you're looking for some undyed yarn. This one is in DK yarn because I just wanted it to be a little bit thicker, but you can also do the pattern in fingering weight yarn as well. All the instructions are written out for fingering weight yarn as well. It's great for using up little scraps of yarn. If you're using fingering weight yarn, each one of these diamonds uses 10 grams. If you're using DK yarn, it uses 15 grams. You knit each of them separately, so then sew them together, and I do have a tutorial now that shows you how I sewed the pieces together. You can of course do just a crochet join as well, but it'll be more of a visible join if you do a crochet join. But I wanted a blanket where you actually make all the little pieces and then you can put them together afterwards, because you can then consider colour placement after you've actually knitted them, rather than having to think about what you're going to join on next. So I do have tutorials on how to pick up stitches from an I-cord, which is part of one of the diamonds, and also on how to kitchener stitch the I-cord that's around the edge together as well. But all those tutorials are there for help you, and if you have any difficulties you can contact me and I can try and give you pointers. But it's pretty straightforward pattern. I would say that it's good for a beginner as well, because I've got those tutorials to hold your hands on the bits that are slightly tricky, but they're really not very difficult. It's a garter stitch shape, and I think that it's quite a nice little knit. You could easily do one of these diamonds in an evening, even if you're quite a slow knitter. So come and join us over on the Ravelry group on Instagram, and I can't wait to see how yours is knitting up. You can knit it in your own yarn, or if you're actually purchasing one of my yarn clubs, the Pop Stars mini sets are designed to actually go for these stars, and I'm going to knit mine in the Pop Stars colours that I've put together. So each of the Pop Stars mini sets is inspired by a pop star, and you get 6 minis that go together, and I've designed them to make one of these stars so that they work well together. And I've also made them so that all of the colour sets throughout the year sort of blend together nicely to make a blanket with a star for each pop star, which I thought was a brilliant idea, if I do say so myself. So that's that. Yarn clubs for February are now listed on the website. They will be available to purchase until the 11th of February. They will be shipped on the 16th of February. And I've actually got bundles where you can buy 2 and 3 months on there as well. This month's colourway is Endless Love, and it's purples and pinks and corally colours. And this is available in a number of bases, but it's only available this month, so because it's colour of the month colourway. And they'll be shipped at a similar time to the actual yarn clubs for the Pop Stars and the music from the movies sock sets or short sets. But I'll leave links to those so you can have a look at the listings on my website. So it's over to Jensen in his new DK Flax jumper. Now, I took this footage when we were out earlier today, so it was lovely and sunny, but a little bit chilly. He's got 2 jumpers on at the same time. So because the Flax DK jumper was knitted for the 2 to 4 year size, it is a little bit big on him, so it's ideal for sticking over another jumper, so that he can actually just wear a jumper outside rather than his coat as well. But I loved the way that the actual pattern came together. Nice and simple jumper with some really cute garter stitch down the sleeve, and it's a free pattern as well, which is always good, and it goes up to adult sizes. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in next week's video. Bye! So Jensen wants to show his own jumper. So what do you think? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's for you.
Yeah.
I think it looks lovely. I think it's really nice that it's a free pattern as well, and it goes right up to adult ages, doesn't it? Should we knit Daddy a jumper in it as well? The same colour? Matching? I think that would be nice, wouldn't it? What have you got there?
Blue.
Needle stoppers? Yep. You're showing them on the video. You're so funny. Look at you. You're going to make your own videos? Yeah. Have you dropped them? Are you looking at your t-shirt?